So I finally got around to watching House of the Dragon episode 6. Again, I'm behind the times. It is what it is. But I this is the weird one because this one had a huge time jump. Like we changed almost the entire cast, apart from King Viserys and Daemon. Everyone else has changed. Um, in terms of main principal actors, the Hand is, still this one guy, and so on and so forth. But we got a lot of actors playing, Rhaenyra and Leonor and so on and so forth. And it was a little jarring to be honest with you, in terms of trying to come to grips with how much time had passed, because you don't really get told until later on in the episode that it's been like 10 years. All you know is that here's a bunch of new kids that have suddenly sprung up out of nowhere, so we know that some time has passed. But beyond that, a lot of stuff going on here. As always, my reviews are not spoiler free. So if you're looking for spoiler free territory, the show's been off the air already for a while now. So I would think my reviews aren't going to be that big of a deal because I'm doing this while it's already come and gone. But just to be on the safe side, yeah, spoilers. Um, yeah, anyway, let's dive in because I think that this episode for me was one of the more interesting episodes because we're seeing that political alliances have shifted entirely, and we're also seeing POVs that are completely different than the earlier episodes. So this episode starts off with the princess giving birth, and I didn't realize until later on in the episode that this was her third child. I thought it was maybe her first. I was like, okay, we're dealing with a different actress. Is this the princess? Oh, it is the princess. Okay, she's giving birth. Another child, um, healthy, and then immediately she's being called into the queen. That the child is being summoned to the queen. I didn't know why, but Rhaenyra is like, no, 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 I'm going with it. So she gets up right after the pain of childbirth, goes marching up, and obviously in great deal of pain, and she's accompanied by her faux spouse, um, Leonor, I believe is his name, who's the guy she's been with for 10 years, who is gay, but she's letting him do what he wants to do, and she's obviously doing what she wants to do. And I didn't realize until later on why the queen had demanded to see the baby as soon as it was born. And it's because, and this is a theme that crops up throughout the episode, as much as the queen has allowed Leonor to pursue his own interests, the queen has also found herself her own lover in the form of the commander of the City Watch, who is the current Hand's son. And this is the brother of, what is his name? I'm forgetting his name now. The crippled guy who turns out to be really devious in this episode. But she's apparently been with him, and she's got 3 kids with him. This is the third one, ranging in age, and they're all boys and they're all dark haired, which is not not good. In terms of the fact that her husband is of the old blood of Valerian, and he also has white hair, and none of their children have white hair, so they don't look anything like the father. When they get to the queen's chamber, the old king is there. Viserys is there, and he's doting on the baby, and he's like, "Oh, I think it's got his father's nose." And I didn't take anything of that until as we were getting to the end of that scene, the queen leans into Leonor and says, "Maybe next time the baby will actually look like you." So it's well known by pretty much everyone that Leonor is not the father of these children, that the queen is having babies from someone else, and everyone just knows that that's the commander of the City Watch. Now, this comes into play later because we see here as well that Sir Criston is still alive, and the Queen apparently saved him from suicide. And he's obviously very, very, very grumpy and butthurt about all of these things. Um, they are. There's this scene where the Queen is walking with uh, Kristen, and is it Kristen or Crispin? I always forget the names here. There's too many names to know. But in any case, yeah, Kristen Cole, that's what it is. Uh, he, they're walking down the chamber, and he slips up, and he's basically criticizing the queen. He's criticizing the princess along with the queen, and then he calls her a selfish cunt, and then he apologizes. Um, it's just proof that his whole, virtuous self is completely gone. Like he was ready to commit suicide and take the honorable way out at that point, and the queen saved him to be her confidant and her personal guard, and he's apparently been simmering away and brewing hatred for all those years since then. And it really comes to a head in the training yard when all of the kids, although I'm getting ahead of myself here, there is then a scene in the dragon pit where all these kids, and I'm confused about who's who here, but basically we have Aegon, who is the firstborn of Viserys and Alicent, and Aemond, who is the secondborn of those two. And then we have the three children of Rhaenyra, and they're all in the dragon pit. And um, one of Rhaenyra's kids, Jade or Jace or something, is being introduced to a dragon and being taught how to train it. And then they all mock Aemon Targaryen, who is the younger of Viserys' children, because he doesn't have a dragon yet. And they're like, "We have one for you." And they bring up a pig. The kids bring up a pig with wings on it, and they're like, "Yeah." So obviously they're ribbing him and everything else. And this comes out in the training yard later, where Kristen Cole is training the kids, um, and um, he's being a bit of a dick. And this commander of the city watches there, and he makes an accusation and says, "Well, I think you should train all of these. Instead of you're only paying attention to the blonde-haired ones, you should also train these," meaning my three children. But he can't say that, obviously. And Kristen Cole knows that this guy's sleeping with the queen or sleeping with the princess, and he's like, "Fine, you want him trained? I'll train him." And then he pulls him forward, and he basically tells Aegon, beat the shit out of him, kick him when he's down, everything else. And there's this confrontation between the two men about how, that's how you teach them to fight, by attacking people when they're down. Where's your honor? And then there's some words about you're defending them like they might be your children. And so Kristen knows, and he's making an insult. And the father, commander of the City Watch, breaks down and beats the shit out of Kristen and gets arrested and gets expelled from the City Watch. And yeah, that comes into play later. Meanwhile, we see Damon and his wife now. They have children. Is it Rhaenyra? Again, the names are really, really, really confusing. Lena, Valerian. They're in Pentos with their two children, and they're basically living these lives of luxury where they have dragons, people have gold, and Damon appears satisfied to be far, far away from the succession and all the bullshit and politics and just be, a fat, lazy man. He's not fat and lazy, but he's content to be pampered by rich people who want him for his dragons because it's a simple life. His family's well provided for. His wife is complaining about it because she wants to go back and become a dragon rider. She wants to, maintain her birthright and everything else. But Damon doesn't want to go back. He doesn't want to deal with all the politics and everything else. Um, there's a lot of stuff that's just happening really, really quickly in this episode. But basically, um, she wants to return. He doesn't. She goes to have a child. She's. It doesn't come out. They offer to maybe cut the baby out, and Damon says no. And then she, unbeknownst to Damon, wanders out into to the to the coast to her dragon and has her dragon burn her to a crisp because she knows that she's going to die no matter what, and she would rather go out with dragon fire. And Damon witnesses this and is just absolutely traumatized. Also, her dragon was massive. It said that that was the biggest dragon of all, or she rides the biggest known dragon or something like that. But it was massive in the shots that they did with the dragons flying around, which is kind of cool. But going back to the court, the big thing going on here is that there's tension between the queen's family and um, Rhaenyra's, or with the Queen of Rhaenyra's. And because everyone suspects the commander, the Hand goes to renounce his position because he says, "Look, I can't be your hand anymore because there's this honor hanging over I can't deal with it. I need to go. And the king is like, you're not allowed to go. He's like, what dishonor are you speaking of? And he won't name it. And the king is blind to what Rhaenyra is doing, and he doesn't want to accept it because of what it would do to the land. So he doesn't want to address it publicly, and he won't let the hand quit. And um, there's a scene at the table where Rhaenyra tries to make up with Alicent and offers to wed their two children together, and Alicent is, of course, no, because she doesn't want to do it because they're not pure-blooded Targaryens. But what's really telling here is that there is a meeting here where, yeah, here it says this. I'm reading another article which I think is really good. They said that it's the sudden super villainification of Larys Strong, which I think is really interesting because this is the brother of the guy who's been screwing the princess, and it's the son of the hand, and it's the cripple we've seen before. And it turns out he's kind of like the first spider type character, and he's got like a scarab on his staff that he uses to walk his cane. But there's this sequence where he's right after Rhaenyra's witness, or right after, excuse me, Alicent witnesses the hand trying to abandon his post, and the king saying no. She has a meeting with Larys, and it turns out that they've been in cahoots the whole time, and he's been reporting everything to her. And she basically talks about how I wish my father was here because if he was here, he would pay attention to me, and no one else pays attention to me. And if my father was here, I would get my way. And Larys is like, okay. And then he goes and recruits some dudes, some guys who are destined to be hanged, and says, I'll give you your lives if you do this thing for me. And he cuts out all their tongues and he sends them to his home castle and has his brother burned alive. And I believe his father as well killed. The way I understood it as the episode was ending, he has his father and his brother burned alive and killed by these cutthroat dudes so that the queen can have her father back in the position of the hand. And the end sequence here is just that some of the dialogue that comes out is some of the best writing I've ever seen as he's narrating these sequences of how, you know, love is, love is malarkey, marriage is stupid, children are a waste of resources and it's not worth it. And it's really dismal. And then the queen saying, I didn't want this. And he's like, what the queen wishes for, the queen gets. I'm sure she'll reward me sometime in the future. And it's just like, oh my God, because he's basically telling her now you can go call your daddy back and he can become the king again, or can become the hand again, and you can get what you wanted. It's just a very brutal and beautiful end of the history, but it's also just a long blip in the Harrenhal storybook as well. Um, Really good episode, but much darker. I don't think this is for me, it wasn't as good. I think I've given all the other previous episodes like 10 out of 10s. This one slipped a little bit. I'd give it like an 8 out of 10 just because I felt like some of the pacing was a little bit off. But overall, it was a really good episode. And it was jarring to deal with the time change and everything. Still a good episode. Love to hear your thoughts. Drop them down below. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon. Support in any way you can. Super chats, stickers, super thanks, memberships. Also the Patreon page. See you in the next episode, everybody. Cheers.